with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus moved about within Galilee, but did not wish to travel in Judea because the Jews were trying to kill him. But the Jewish feast of tabernacles was near. But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, he himself also went up, not openly, but as it were in secret. Some of the inhabitants of Jerusalem said, "Is he not the one they are trying to kill? And look, he is speaking openly, and they say nothing to him." Could the authorities have realized that he is the Christ? But we know where he is from. When the Christ comes, no one will know where he is from. So Jesus cried out in the temple area as he was teaching and said, "You know me and also know where I am from. Yet I did not come on my own, but the one who sent me, whom you do not know, is true. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." So they tried to arrest him, but no one laid a hand upon him because his hour had not yet come. The Gospel of the Lord. If we try to focus, bulang adlaw de, liwat. If we try to focus on the very graphic presentation, not in a negative sense of what graphic is, as you may be thinking of, but in the way that it is dealt verse by verse by the first reading, I think it's a good thing also to take a look into what the Book of Wisdom speaks about the prediction, or actually the prophecy, which had already been given by the prophets earlier about the suffering one, the suffering Messiah. Because this very image of today's first reading really fits very well to the Lord Jesus. And not only to him, but to the ones who were plotting against him. But at the same time, it is a good thing to know that towards the end of our first reading, the author himself makes this evaluative judgment or evaluation that they were sinning, they erred, because in their thoughts, what they were thinking were blinded because of wickedness. And this is one interesting entry point for us as we continue our devotions and the things that we have to do during the season of Lent, that we have to open up our hearts in order to avoid what we call spiritual blindness. And this is what the imagery is all about in the first reading. And even in the gospel readings, reaction of the people, because sometimes we may say, "I know that guy, I know this person," but we do not really know everything. That's why there's some kind of a blind spot in it. But what is this spiritual blindness that actually is the result of the wickedness in the hearts of men and women? You know, when we talk about evil, in the first place, it is not only limited to what we can do negatively or what we do not do instead of doing something, but it's actually called withdrawal. No? There is what we call terminologies like acts of commission and acts of non-commission. You commit and then you also do not do instead of imbis nga atong himuon. But apart from that, there is an even more dangerous thing that happens, and that is in the hearts and minds of all of us. And that is what spiritual blindness. And when that happens, we will not be able to understand the counsels of God, as the first reading says. And we cannot also take a look into the recompense of what holiness gives as a fruit. And finally, we will not be able to see the reward of an innocent soul. And these are the basic things that we have to take into account precisely because we come into this season and there are things and fruits that we have to reap, we have to harvest. It is through our deeds, but at the same time, through the very good intentions that we are doing in relation to the promise of God, who touches our hearts and who reads our minds and hearts. And so as we continue with this Eucharistic celebration, putting on mind the many things that may somehow be in our hearts. Sometimes things like, I have to do this now, I have to do this later, all these things. We should not forget that there is some important connection that we do with the Spirit, with what the Spirit demands. And we have to give into that, because that is God's way of touching us in the form of grace and blessings. Amen.